right, so I figured instead of meeting on video and having you only see what I'm doing once, I am just gonna go over the guide so you can watch this as many times as possible and let me know if you have any questions and all of that. That way you're not staying up super late trying to meet or anything like that. We could just kind of go back and forth. Okay, so I created a guide. I'm going to send this PDF to you, but also I'm going to go over it here. So don't mind me, I'm just going to read off some of the stuff here just so we have everything. So social media, videography, and editing tips, what I like to call the basics, of very basics. We're going to talk about a few things, get into a little detail, and then if you're like, oh, I need more, I want more, let me know and we can talk about, even more things and getting even more specific. All right, I'm just going to read this out. So creating videos for social media can feel like a lot of work sometimes, but with the right setup, a little time and practice, this will get a lot easier. The key is to be thinking with the mind of a consumer. Some questions to ask is, how can I make this content easy to consume visually and audibly? How do I want someone to feel when they see this video? I watched some of the content you already posted, and throughout this guide, I'm going to provide you some tips and tricks that will help your videos stick out and attract even more viewers. That's what we want. We want people to scroll, see your video, and stay and watch it. So, stuff you already told me you have, the Galaxy S20, InShot, Movie Maker, Natural Light, that's all great. I have InShot on my phone, so it's totally useful. I love it. I have a few recommendations. Again, everything you have is amazing. These are just a few things if you're interested. There are free versions of these, and then there's versions you can pay for. The free versions work great. I don't like to pay for most of my apps. I like to, get the free version. But there's also like upgraded ones you can pay for. Anyway, the first one, CapCut. I've talked about this before. It's really good with captions nowadays, especially if you're talking in your video. You want to add captions. It's all, it's attention grabbing, and it's good for the deaf and hard of hearing community. All around, just great for editing too. They have filters and everything you can ask for when it comes to a video editing app. One of the best out there. Canva. Instagram posts, creative templates, free pics and vectors. I created this on Canva for you. So it's one of my favorite things to use, especially if you want to do really cool Instagram posts, things like, for example, I post something called What I Learned This Week, and the type of templates and things I can do is just really nice. And they also have free stock footage if you wanted to add those to your videos. So I love it, highly recommend. Next, Splice. Again, another great video editing app. They're really good with combining video and external audio. A lot of other apps do that too, but Splice is really good with it. And it has pretty smooth transitions and creative ways to merge clips together. So all in all, I recommend all of these in this order: CapCut, Canva, Splice, or all three. But InShot is amazing. I really love the crop feature on InShot that lets you crop to each and every social media platform. So this is like the basics of just the equipment and some apps that I recommend. Let's go to the settings. Now, you mentioned you have a Samsung Galaxy S20. Something I always recommend is that you shoot in the highest resolution possible that's on your phone. 4K is what it probably has. If not 4K, 1080, but 4K is best. It does take up a little bit of storage, so I always recommend, if you're filming something super high storage, film the video, edit it, delete the raw files if you want to, but up to you. Next, grid lines. So if you'd like to have grid lines as a framing guide, make sure to toggle this on, make it blue like these. If you want to know more about the rule of thirds, you can go ahead and look up the term rule of thirds. It's basically a guide on how someone should be placed on a screen. Really, really helpful. Lastly, on the camera settings, there's a setting called ultra wide shape correction. This makes sure the sides don't bend when you're shooting in a wide focal length. Sometimes if you're shooting in a wide focal length, it can get a little fisheye, and you don't want that. So you want to keep that on just to make sure everything's shaped properly. Next, filming tips. These are just a few things that's super helpful, just something to think about when you're filming, when you're ready to shoot content. Number one, touch the screen and slide down exposure for a more cinematic effect, aka lock your exposure. And this will make sure the auto exposure isn't all over the place and your video's lighting levels aren't fluctuating. For example, he just taps it, comes up as this, and they slides it down, and it can make the video darker, bring those shadows down. It just gives a bit more of a cinematic effect. Number 2, shoot in 60 frames per second. This is going to allow you to slow down the footage later in your editing program if you want. It also helps to get rid of a camera shake. Having the option to slow down footage is super important, especially if you want to do slow-mo. I believe in one of your videos you did do slow-mo, and this isn't going to affect the normal footage. It just allows the slow down footage, if you do slow it down, to be a lot more cinematic. Number 3, do more cinematic movements like panning in and out, side to side. Still shots are also a great option, but moving the camera provides a lot more to play with when you're editing. So, and you want to hold the camera stable and then slowly slide to the side, slowly push in and out. And when I say still shots are great, you really want to make sure your hand is nice and steady. And I believe I'm going to talk about that a little later. Number 4, use different focal lengths, wide, medium, tight. So you'll notice on the phone, when you start filming, it'll say maybe 0.5 or 1 or 2x. And this just means it's super close, it's very wide, or it's kind of right in the middle, a very natural shot. So it's always cool to use each of those so you can get different angles of the same shot. You never know what you want, and especially if you're using a super, super close-up shot and you get that focus right, it can be really cinematic. Number 5, color grade. So most phone cameras make the footage highly saturated and highly contrasted. So in return, lower the saturation and contrast in your editing program to make it look a bit more cinematic. For example, this here, a little too much color. The grass doesn't look that realistic. It just looks a little cartoony. And this right here is just a little bit better. Now, it's all up to you and what you want to do and depending on the video. And remember, these are just screenshots. But what I like about this is the grass looks a bit more of a natural green. So maybe to fix this a little more, I would take the fade away a little bit, bring up the colors. But you don't want the grass to be yellow. You want it to show more of a green. And you see how the blue here, it's just super dark, a lot of contrast. You just want to lighten it up a little bit. And it all depends on if there's someone in the video, their skin tones, all of that. But you want to make it a lot less saturated and put a lot less contrast on it. Now let's talk specifically tips for your style of videos. Number 1, I saw that you make beats and like to share them on social media, especially on TikTok. I saw them. If you don't want to be in the video, which some people do, they just sit in the video, hold up their laptop and play a beat. You don't have to do that. Another good example for a piece of content is to light your laptop cinematically. Put a light behind your laptop, turn the overhead lights off. Pardon that mistake. Turn the overhead lights off and lower the exposure. It's a small thing that really makes your video pop. So for example, if you had this recording vertically, you turn all the lights off, you put a small little light behind there if you have it, maybe a lamp, and you just do the same thing we talked about in this tip, where you just bring it down a little bit. And just having something like that and playing your beat just makes it look a bit more cinematic, and people will be like, oh, what is this? Let me click on it. It's really popping right now. Number 2, you can also play the stems of the beat in different clips and then play the whole beat right after. So you'll hear people go, oh, what if I do drums like, right? And then what if I do guitar like, do-do-do? And then you can do that and play those different stems, turn the solo toggles on and off, and then right after play the full beat. That's a cool idea. Something else you could do, because I noticed you kind of did this, you would put the title of the beat over your beat that was playing. You could do things like putting text over it, like, it's a cold rainy day, but the thought of you keeps me warm type beat. And so they're reading it, but they're also listening to it. And so that allows them to visualize it. Or you can say something like, this makes me feel like I'm running around in a wide open field with warm wind blowing in my face, and putting that over the clip of the beat playing. So that's just a couple ideas for beats specifically. And lastly, I want to talk about the food videos. So you make a lot of food content. I love it. You could also try filming your food from different angles, side, overhead, super close up. Make sure to add panning, of course, like we talked about earlier, and be sure your shots are very slow. Try to hold a slow still shot for at least 5 seconds to give yourself time to capture it. Something a lot of people end up doing is they'll film it, they think they got a shot, and they'll move the camera. And then when you go to edit it, you don't really have any stable or still shots there. It's a bit shaky and not so good looking. So, obviously this is just, professional commercial, but if you had a veggie burger, you know what I mean, and you wanted to film it cinematically, you could just again get these different type of angles, make sure the shot's super still, and that could be really cool to capture. And it could be with anything. It could be with pasta or just anything you want to make. So I would love to see you give that a try. And finally, like right down here, something I noticed because I used to try to film some of my food I made. If the food is smoking and it's fogging the camera, you should take a deep breath and blow the smoke away from the camera while recording if you can. I think I saw that in one of your videos. You were making maybe like a pasta, I'm not sure, and the camera was getting a little smoky. If you just go and just blow that, it's going to just get the smoke away just for a second, just enough to clear that camera up so you can get a good shot. Again, I'm going to send this to you so you'll have this. If you have any questions at all, let me know. Again, these are just like the basics that are really going to get you started and making your content pop a bit more. If you have any specific videos, like if you're like, hey, this is the type of video I want to do, this is something I want, how can I film this exact thing? Go ahead and let me know, and then we can talk about that eventually. But yeah, so this is the guide. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for reaching out to me. I always love talking about this stuff. I could talk about it for days. So